So, although we have tried to establish the motivation of distributive equality by introducing the Buddha's teaching on the 6 principles of harmony and respect, we have only really just touched the surface. So let's discuss the motivation of equality a bit further. Now, as we have been told, the social stability and peace is based on equality. Now, as a sage teacher for all the Chinese race, Confucius really yearned for the time of King Wen and King Wu of the Western Zhou dynasty. He said, the former ruler, Wen and Wu, were greatly just and enriched the people. So this is how much importance that Confucius attached to equality. The Western Zhou dynasty lasted for 350 years, and the last king of the Western Zhou dynasty was King You of Zhou, right? And whenever the ancient Chinese tried to warn the kings and those in high position to do the right thing for the people, they always made reference to King You. During King You's regime, the government official lived an extremely extravagant life, but the common people could hardly find a proper occupation to support their families or bury the dead. The gap between the rich and the poor became greater and greater, eventually leading to the ruin of the whole empire. According to Confucius' teaching, the consequence of distributive inequality is not only disproportional ownership of material, but also a psychological one. More specifically, those who have too much of wealth are just as bad as those who have too little of it. Why? Well, this is all to do with human nature. Let me explain. Great concentration of wealth could make a man proud, and great poverty could make a man wretched. So this is the psychological consequence of wealth distribution. But it doesn't stop there. When a person is wretched, he will likely become a robber. But when a person is proud or too proud, he will likely become an oppressor. You see, nobody explicitly asked them to do that. It's just part of the human habit. So the sages and we, are the same in every aspect, but we're different in that they understand this very origin of disorder. So they establish social laws and orders to bring both ends of the wealth spectrum back to a harmony. And they want to make sure that the wealthy can show their distinction without being so proud, and the poor able to make their living without misery. And this is good governance. This is the standard for equalization of society. Not equalization of monetary wealth, but psychological harmony. The Book of Rights also documents similar teaching from Confucius. Confucius said, the sages dealt with the riches and honors, so that riches should not have powers to make them proud, that poverty should not induce that feeling of being pinched. Again, the word proud in this scenario is what induces the feeling of superiority and oppressive behavior. So the issue with inequality in wealth leads to the inequality in the mental status and psychological well-being, and that's what leads to social chaos. In fact, the rich and poor is only relativity. It is not necessarily about how much you don't have, but how much you are below the persons next to you that makes you feel unease. Well, I'm a corporate finance specialist, and I notice that I keep coming back to the topic of executive compensation, but it's not a special case far away from life, I guess. In the research of executive compensation, there is evidence that companies can only attract professional corporate managers by remuneration comparable to peer groups by company size. Okay, now we know this is the standard industry practice, and there's no question about that. The focus here is that people feel poor no matter what, and are always trying to compare themselves against a higher benchmark. The executives that we're talking about in our research are among the top 1% in terms of share of national income. Remember? Yes? But the individual feeling of inequality within this group is just as great as those below them. On many occasions, we find evidence that the richest executives on this planet manipulate their stock options by, what is called backdating the options vesting period in order to realize more capital gain, and that is illegal. If we take a moment to think about the ultimate goal of economic management and governance, what do you think? What is the ultimate goal here? Is it to increase the general level of wealth? Is it to increase material supply, enhance efficiency in production process, or maybe happiness, harmony? In Chinese language, there's a compound word called rich and honor. Okay, this is the one word called rich and honor. It is used to describe anyone who are both materially abundant and mentally honorable and happy. They're both. Okay, so although the level of technology in modern days is unmatched by the ancient times, it is becoming an increasingly common phenomenon that the modern human is honorable yet uneasy, rich yet ignoble. The reason for this is that the mental fulfillment is becoming less and less. I guess the modern world speaks the language of profitability, return, monetary reward, volatility, delta, vega, but neglects the concept of righteousness and justice. The latter are simply not in the equation. They're not in any of those mathematical models. So the difficulty to quantify these factors has made it pretty much legitimate to completely ignore them in economic policy making, because we can't quantify them. So as a result, what we're getting is simply short-lived, sensuous pleasure that requires constant stimulation from the outside, and we receive very little happiness and fulfillment from selfless mutual care and forgiveness. In the Sutra of Agama, the Buddha teaches about the establishment of the four mindfulness. We have the mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of the feeling and sensation, mindfulness of this consciousness, and mindfulness of the Dharma. Now, for the second one, the word feeling means realizing that all enjoyments are pain. Now, at first you might think, whoa, this is such a pessimistic thought, right? But let's think more carefully. Just look around us and look inside of ourselves. Indeed, in this world, rich or poor, nobody can really say that I am truly and always happy. If you're poor, you worry about the food and clothes, and that is suffering indeed, no doubt. But the wealthy individuals have their own wealthy problems as well, and it is usually more problematic. Taking wealth management as an example, the more you have, the more you could lose, and it's more difficult to maintain the steady rate of growth. Also, one probably has to worry about, theft, asset value depreciation, sincerity of friends and families, and so on. These are real questions. And from our own perspective, we simply want more. regardless of how much we already have. So, given all these, how can we possibly have any chance to feel easy and calm? So, for this reason, ancient sages raised the issue of equality so that we can keep both rich and poor in good nature and preserve social peace. So this is the ultimate goal of distributive equality.